As the last Muslim warrior stepped onto the shore of Hispania, a heavy silence fell over the beach. The initial triumph of a successful landing was quickly replaced by a creeping dread. Scouts returned to camp with urgent news, their faces pale. King Roderic, enraged by their audacity and they abandoned his northern campaigns, was marching south. He wasn't just coming with a regiment, he was bringing his entire royal army, a force so vast it was said its number could block out the sun. Whispers spread through the Muslims, rank 100,000 men. They were 7,000, isolated on a foreign shore with the endless sea at the backs and the avalanche of steel descending upon them. That night in Tariq's command tent, the air was thick with tension. His captains, brave men who had never flinched in battle, voiced their fears. We should re-embark, return to Africa. One argued, we can defend the rock and wait for reinforcements from Musa. Suggested another, the logical choices were retreat or defense. But Tariq listened in silence, his eyes fixed on flickering flame of a single lamp. He saw not just the fear in his commander's eyes, but the seed of doubt that could destroy an army more surely than any sword. He knew conventional wisdom would lead to their annihilation. They needed a miracle, and miracle required unwavering faith. At dawn, Tariq gathered his entire army on the beach. The men stood in nervous ranks, the morning sun glinting off their spears. They expected a speech about courage, a plan for fortification. They did not expect their commander to give the most shocking order of their lives. Tariq's voice, calm yet carrying over this crowd, echoed across the sand, burned the ships. A stunned silence was followed by confused murmurs. Had they heard correctly? But as Tariq repeated the command, soldiers reluctantly moved toward the vessels that were their only link to home, their only chance of survival. Torches were thrown onto the wooden hulls, and soon a wall of fire began to consume their fleet. As the flames roared and crackled, casting long, dancing shadows, Tariq climbed onto a prominent rock, silhouetted against the inferno. The entire army turned to him, their faces a canvas of shock, fear, and confusion. And then he spoke words that would be echoed into history. "Oh, my warriors," he cried, his voice powerful and resonant. "Whither would you flee? The sea is behind you, and the enemy is before you. By Allah, there is no salvation for you, except in our courage and your patience." He reminded them that they were the bearers of truth and justice, that paradise awaited the martyrs, and that victory comes from Allah alone. He was not just burning wood, he was incinerating the very concept of retreat from their hearts. A profound transformation swept through an army. As the ships turned to ash, the fear in the soldier eyes were replaced by fierce, burning light. The desperation was forced into determination. There were no more options, no more debates. There was only forward, there was only faith. They raised their swords to the sky, their slow shouts of Allahu Akbar drowning out the roar of the flames. In that moment, they were no longer 7,000 men. They were a single unstoppable force, united by covenant with God and their commander. The comfort of the past was gone, and its place was the pure, sharp focus of those who had everything to gain and nothing left to choose. With the smoke of their past still rising behind them, Tariq's army turned its back on the sea. They began their march inland, following the path that would lead them to the banks of Godlet River, where Rodric's horde was assembling. Their steps were no longer heavy with dread, but light with purpose. They marched not as invaders, but as liberators, guided by divine will. Scouts reported on the enemy's movements, and Tariq, with the strategic mind of master, chose the battlefield, a place where the terrain would favor his disciplined, mobile force over Roderic's unwieldy numbers. On the night before the battle, the Muslim camp was not a place of frantic preparation, but of serene devotion. Instead of the usual clamor of war, the air was filled with the quiet hum of prayers. Tariq moved among his men not as distant generals but as a brother in faith, reminding them of the reward that awaited them. As he looked out across the plain where the countless campfires of his Gothic army twinkled like a field of stars. He felt not fear, but a profound sense of peace. The flame of faith had been lit. Tomorrow it will be meet the fire of war.